I just love doing that in the morning. Good morning. I hope you are well. I am well myself. So, today we're going to talk about something that is a little bit controversial, and the title of this is cheeky, but I'm actually being serious. I'm going to discuss with you 5 reasons you should not try the most powerful psychedelic known to man, also known as 5-MeO DMT. And I'm going to speak from my experience. I'm obviously not a doctor. I don't think a doctor could even really, this is not something that there are doctors for necessarily. PhDs, not MDs, maybe. Regardless, I'm going to speak from my experience. I'm going to share some stories. And I'm going to share the points and the counterpoints for why you would not consider this type of medicine and what I've learned from it. Okay, so let's chat. I guess context first. So 5-MeO DMT is also known as the spirit molecule, and they say that it is released in great quantities when you're born and when you die. The most relatable thing that you might be able to hook onto if you don't have any context for it is DMT is a chemical, or I guess it would be a molecule that is released when you're in that borderline state between dreaming and waking. And if you've ever been in that dream and wake state where you're just coming out of a sleep or you're just going into a sleep, you know that the line between what is physical, everyday, normal reality and the expansive and infinite dream state, that line kind of collapses for even just a split second. And sometimes it's hard to tell what is a dream and what is reality. And that is from the influence of DMT. And so 5-MeO DMT is an exogenous form of that, a powerful form that you can take in through smoking it, vaporizing it, or injecting it. And it is a powerful dose that's coming from outside of your body, so it blasts you off. When it's just created inside of your body through the natural dream and wake state, it can still be very powerful. And we've all probably had those very powerful dream sequences and dream experiences. So this is just essentially it's kickstarting that process with an external agent. And it's one of a kind. So let me not big it up. Let me actually take it back and share some of my experience. I have been, I guess you could say, working with the medicine. I'm not a shaman. I'm not a psychedelic expert. I'm just a humble student of the plant. And over the past, it's been about 10 years now. It's been about 10 years that I have been learning from this medicine. I connected with a really good shaman. This is about 10 years ago when I was in California, and he's taken me on many journeys. I've gone with friends and family into these experiences, and I've learned quite a lot about myself. And before DMT, I really didn't have a lot of reference for psychedelic states. I just heard about them. I'd just seen some things in movies and documentaries, but DMT was my first actual real psychedelic experience, which is crazy because it's the most powerful psychedelic one can take. It would be like, instead of climbing a mountain step by step, taking a helicopter to the very peak the first time. So it's really intense. And let me share with you some of the things I've learned from 10 years. And I can't even tell you how many journeys I've been on now. It's a lot. I can't tell you how many. reasons why you shouldn't take DMT. So if you don't want your personality or your values to change, don't take DMT. This is actually something that I was worried about during my first, like before my first experience. And the reason I was worried about it was because this is the time when I was just starting to finally become popular online and starting to make money. And I was worried that my values would change and I wouldn't be successful anymore. And I was right. My values did change and my personality did change. Now, in what ways do you think I mean? Well, for me, I was building up and had built up a career around teaching people how to make money. Rich 20-something was my first brand and my first book. And as soon as I took DMT, I just realized kind of how silly it all was. And it doesn't mean that I wanted to immediately throw away my career, but I saw the game from a higher level. I saw the real reason behind me wanting to do this was just to feel security in myself, that I was respected and loved and appreciated. And I saw the yearning for security through money was actually a false flag, a false pretense, as it were, because there is no security through money. We think there's security through money, but the only thing that's constant in life is change, and money doesn't prevent change. And you can have as much money as you want and still feel very insecure. And all you have to do is look at the richest people in the world. And if anything, the richest people in the world try to use money to grab power because they still feel insecure. And on the flip side of that, you'll probably meet a lot of people who don't have any money or not anywhere close to the resources that these richest people have. And they're more grounded in themselves, they're more confident in themselves, they're more secure in themselves, and they're happier in their lives. There's no correlation between riches and happiness. Now, I'm not going to go on to a whole tangent about how like money doesn't buy happiness, because I think that's kind of bullshit in a certain way, because obviously money solves money problems. And if you're really unhappy because you don't have money, then you will feel better when you have it. But I'm just talking in general. There is no real security in life, and we're grasping for security through different means, whether it's money or status or power or friendships or romantic relationships or whatever, like insert the blank. When we're trying to create security in our lives, it's because we have an innate understanding that life is fundamentally insecure. There is actually nothing to grab onto, and this is essentially, if we're looking at it strictly linearly, which is a conversation maybe we'll have later in this video, if you're looking at life strictly linearly, it's a conveyor belt from birth to death. And that is the only sure thing, and there's nothing you can obtain materially which will change that. Kind of heavy for the first point, right? What did Shakespeare say? He said, life is a story, life is a journey from nothing to nothing, told by an idiot. Life is a story and a journey from nothing to nothing, told by an idiot. Something like, I'm paraphrasing him. And it's true though, it's true. And so I just saw, in my first experience with DMT, I saw this and I felt it in a very visceral way. And it changed me. It changed my values. And then I had to go on living and still pursuing my career, knowing that this was true. And there's a difference between like knowing something intellectually and really knowing something, like feeling something, internalizing something. And of course, I can talk to you about this and it makes sense intellectually, but when you feel how transient life is and the fundamental insecurity of life, it's not necessarily a negative thing. It's just a knowing, and that will affect how you approach life. And look, even when it comes to, so that these types of things affect your personality, and you can't unsee it. Once you Once you feel that and see that, there's no going back. So if you don't want to have some of these deep realizations, and your realizations might not be the same as mine if you try it. If you don't want to have these deep realizations, then you shouldn't try these medicines, because you're going to learn things about yourself that you maybe wish you wouldn't have known. And honestly, sometimes I understand why they say ignorance is bliss, right? Another thing to consider too when it comes to your personality and your values, you are going to, if you're a religious person, I think it could go one of two ways, but I've seen it go more the other way. If you're a religious person, this could definitely deepen your religious conviction, for sure. I've seen that happen in psychedelic experiences where a psychedelic experience deepens someone's religious conviction. I've actually seen people undergo psychedelic experiences where they had no religious conviction and they went completely religious, like born again Christian. And that certainly is possible. But more often than not, what I've seen is people strip the religion. Now they gain a ton of spirituality, but they strip the religion from it. And my personal opinion is that if you take, this is my personal opinion, if you take a psychedelic or you have a psychedelic experience and you go ultra religious, ultra Christian, doesn't have to just be Christian, that's just what I've seen, then that tells me that there's still another layer that you're not digging under. Because religion essentially is the facade of spirituality. Not that it's fake, but religion is like the structure around spirituality. Religion is the packaging around the fundamentals of a connection to God. So it's just like if you go to the store and they have different types of cereal you can buy. It's like, do you want Cocoa Puffs? Do you want Lucky Charms? Do you want Trix? Trix are for kids. Silly Rabbit. But at the end of the day, all of these are packagings around philosophies and concepts of the highest power. And there are different ingredients in these religions, but essentially they're made from the same thing, which is God. And everyone has a different vision of that, and that's talked about in all the different variations of religions, but essentially they're packagings. And from my experience, and from mostly what I've seen in other people's experiences, religion is usually cast away and spirituality is fully embraced. I just want to make sure that this microphone is picking up. I'm not going to edit this either. Yes, it is. Okay. And so if you're someone who's very comfortable in your religion, then maybe you shouldn't take DMT. Because there is a certain amount of comfort in thinking and being in line with what your parents taught you, being in line with what your family believes. There's a certain amount of community and comfort in that. And if you take DMT, it might destroy that perception. But when I say destroy, I don't mean that, I don't mean it's a negative thing. I mean it in the same way that you would destroy a cage that a spirit was being held in. And if you're very religious, that might sound sacrilegious. That might sound blasphemous even. But it's only discarding a wrapper. It's not discarding the candy. I think Alan Watts would be proud of that metaphor. It's only discarding the wrapper. So, but if you're really comfortable with it and it's also a connection to your family, then that might be a problem for you. And I can just tell you now, I'll read a little bit about my experience. I wrote about my DMT, one of my DMT journeys, or my general experiences of it in my book, The True Artifact, which I'll put a link to this in the description. But there is this, there's this feeling of connection with this all-knowing that transcends whatever we're told about God being this. I mean, in the Christian ideology, we're taught that God is like this old man sitting on a throne with a long white beard, and he's an old wise man, and he's sitting there, he's making decisions, he's blessing some, he's damning the others. And it's just this very human vision of this celestial being, you know. And in the DMT state, you don't see that. And it's communicated in such a precise, somatic, universal way that it would be really hard for you to go back and think about God as that singular monotheistic form. It just doesn't make sense. And it's one thing to go your whole life being told that God is one way, but then when you feel it and it doesn't match with what you're told, you're likely to have some cognitive dissonance and go towards what you feel, even if you won't admit it. And I think this is probably why, you know, Jesus was literally killed for saying, I am God and you are God. Like, he was literally killed for that. And then it's funny because now, as a Christian, whole video is not going to be railing on Christians, but as a Christian, we worship Jesus because he's the Son of God, and we accept the fact that Jesus is Lord. We accept that. So we nowadays accept that Jesus can be God, one with God, the Son of God, but we distance ourselves from that same proposition, which is that you are also God. That's then blasphemous, right? But then DMT brings that back into focus. So yeah, it will change your personality, it will change your values, and if you're not into that, then I wouldn't recommend it. And having tried a lot of other medicines too at this point, when I say medicines, I mean psychedelic plant medicines. Having tried a lot of other things, DMT is definitely the one that will have you questioning. I mean, well, you can get it through mushrooms, you can get it through LSD for sure, but DMT, I mean, they call it the spirit molecule for, you know, for a reason. So, all right, don't do DMT if you don't want to change your personality. All right, don't do DMT if you don't want to be scared. So you will be scared. I'll preface it like this. I actually think I have a pretty unique composition for doing psychedelics because I've had scary moments during trips, but I've never had a bad trip. And I don't think everyone can say that. And so again, I speak from my own experience. You know, your mileage may vary, consult your physician, et cetera, et cetera. I've never had a bad trip. The thing about DMT is it's very short. So the journey itself is only going to be 15 minutes. And you can go in multiple times if you want, but it's going to be 15 minutes. But it feels like an eternity. And there's this point that you'll reach where the medicine is, so let's say you're inhaling the medicine. And if you vaporize it, you can vaporize it and you can get like a volcano bag and you can inhale it and it's just pure DMT. An easier way to do it would be, because it's like a crystal, right? And DMT, 5-MeO DMT, there's different types of DMT. There's NN-DMT and there's 5-MeO DMT. They have slightly different properties in terms of what you'll see and feel. 5-MeO DMT is widely considered more powerful. And 5-MeO DMT is also known as bufo because in nature, it is actually it comes from a toad. So the bufo is a toad. I believe it's found in the Sonoran Desert in Mexico and probably some other places in that area as well. And essentially the toad releases a poison, excretes a poison on its back. And you squeeze the poison out of the toad's back and you dry it. And that dried crystal becomes 5-MeO DMT, which is wild because, just as a tangent here, how did the natives know to do this? It's not a simple process. It's not intuitive. It's the same thing with ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is a plant brew. It's like a tea that you mix from multiple different plants in the Amazon desert. And ayahuasca actually releases DMT in your system. 5-MeO DMT is like a direct shot. Ayahuasca is a long journey. This video is specifically about 5-MeO DMT, which comes from the bufo toad. Whether you're talking about ayahuasca or DMT, how did these cultures know to do this? In the Amazon, the native people will tell you that the plants told them to do it. And It doesn't make sense, but actually it does, because how else would they know? These plants don't necessarily, they don't grow right next to each other. And even if they did, you have to take the plant, you have to boil it in a very specific way and prepare it in a very specific way, because with ayahuasca, you actually need these two plants to be able to ingest DMT orally. DMT cannot be ingested orally. It's broken up in the stomach unless within ayahuasca it has these two plants, and one of them is an MEOI inhibitor, and that allows you to intake it through the intestines and get into the bloodstream. How did these cultures know to do this? It's the same thing as even the pyramids seem to be more obvious. Like, well, maybe they had 1 million slaves doing it. Fine, maybe. But like, this is even crazier to me. And similar with 5-MeO. How did they know? And who risked their life? And why would they do it? To squeeze the poison out of the toad, dry it, and then how did they ingest it? Because again, you can't just lick the toad. You have to, which is gross, but you'd have to dry it and smoke it. And how did they do that? Why did they do that? Was it an accident? It would have to be that they had some sort of vision. It's similar to the stoned ape theory, which is about mushrooms. How did the ancient cultures know to eat these psychedelic mushrooms? So those are a different story for a different video, and I don't know the answer to those questions. But bringing it back, so that's how you ingest it. I've never had a bad trip, but I've had very scary moments in trips. And 5-MeO DMT can be very scary. It can be very scary because essentially you're dying. In certain trips, not every trip, but in certain trips, and especially if you're new to it, you will get the sensation that you're dying. And none of us have ever died before and come back. I mean, it's actually, some people have. Some people have actually died on the operating table in the hospital, and they've come back. And that's what we call a near-death experience. And so they could probably relate to this. And in near-death experience, you can hear all types of stories about people projecting, astral projecting, and remote viewing things and looking down from the corner of the room and hearing and seeing things that they shouldn't have seen and heard because they were supposed to be dead. And so you get a piece of that with DMT. And what I will say is this. First of all, that's very scary. There's an element of it where I'll read this after I finish this brief piece of it. There's an element of it where you're inside of a fractal. You're inside of this speeding fractal of light. And you have a chance to either go all the way in or kind of just stay at the threshold. And going in to that speeding fractal is extremely scary because you intuitively know that when you go into that threshold, it's going to remove your entire personality. It's going to remove who it is that you think that you are. You have a name and a birthplace and a biography and parents and likes and dislikes and memories and a history. And you know that when you merge with that fractal, it's all gone. And you don't know if you're going to come back. And that's very, very scary. And I'll say this, having done it now more times than I can count, which I feel very fortunate to be able to say that, it doesn't necessarily get easier. And because your brain is firing and rewiring in a different way under the influence of DMT and other psychedelics as well, because your brain is firing and rewiring in this different way, you always think you know what it is going in, because afterwards you will form a memory of it. But the memory that you have and the reality of what it is in that moment are never the same thing. And so you're always surprised. It's never like, oh, I got this. I know what this is. I remember this. It's always different. It's never the same. No two journeys are the same. It's not like, oh, I'm walking down the same street again. It's never the same. And I think that's because you come to it differently. You know, you never step in the same river twice. You're never the same person from minute to minute. I think that's a big part of it. And also, it's just your brain can't actually hold on to the full memory of it. And so you never actually remember it. And so it's always equal parts terrifying and exhilarating. So before I go on to the next reason why you should, and I hope that I am doing it justice, because I'm trying to give, in some ways, a contrarian take here on why you shouldn't do this. But also, obviously, I've done it a lot. So my evidence speaks for itself in terms of, I think for me, it's a good thing. But for you, it might not be a good thing. And for some people, they don't want to be scared like that. They don't want to be scared. I was even talking to my mom about UFOs a couple years ago. And I was like, wouldn't you want to know if there were UFOs? And she's like, no, I wouldn't want to be scared. And I'm like, you know what? That's not my perspective at all, but I get it. Let me, so this is True Artifact. Let me see, what chapter is this in? I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but I do want to just share some snippets. Page 109. Okay. This is called What It's Like to Die. I believe in God because I've met it. But the God I've met is not the Lord of any particular religion or doctrine. It's not a Christian, Jewish, or Muslim God. The God I've met doesn't have a book of rules for what we can or can't do. It has no sex or race, and certainly no white beard. In fact, God doesn't even have a personality or any preferences. The God I've met is pure energy, the energy of the entire cosmos, outside and independent of time, in all directions, forever. You may think you can imagine something this vast, but it's impossible if you haven't experienced it. In the past 5 years, I've done work all over the world with different forms of meditation, putting myself in trances and tons of other weird shit, including testing the effects of many different plant medicines. And one of those medicines, DMT, is a psychedelic that many refer to as the spirit molecule. It's the active ingredient in the sacred brew ayahuasca. Scientists believe your brain releases large quantities of it when you're born and when you die. Through DMT, short for dimethyltryptamine, I've actually seen what I can only describe as the death tube. The death tube is the spiral, radiating staircase that many people have described in near-death experiences as the white light. Don't go towards the white light, Johnny. As you ascend the tube, you can feel your entire ego, your entire personality crumbling beneath your feet and falling into an infinite sea. Your brain is a computer on the verge of rebooting. You're about to wipe the slate clean. This is your Morpheus moment. Imagine the terror of knowing that everything you've ever thought, felt, or remembered was going away, that none of this, including you, was ever real, yet somehow being delighted and utterly content with the irony of it all. Imagine feeling the full intensity of every emotion in the human catalog, from heartbreaking despair to tremendous joy. The energy, wisdom, and power developed over centuries of human evolution courses through you, releasing a choreographed stream of every color, image, and vision you've ever had in your entire life, superimposed on top of itself all at once. Every feeling of gratitude you've ever had multiplied by 1 million, every loving memory with your friends, loved ones, and partners magnified. All of it tempered by the intense fear that it was all coming to an end. So this is what it's like to die. Imagine your spirit woven into the collective spirit of every other being that's ever lived or ever will live, instantly endowing you with the knowledge of every word that's ever been thought, said, or written, now and in the future. Once you move beyond self, all fear dissolves. And just when you think you can't take anymore, you'll break into 1 trillion mirrored pieces and shoot through to the other side of infinity, down the spiral radiating white tube. You emerge on the other side into what I can only describe as a divinely loving celestial void, except that there is no you. There is the presence of God with no form. It knows you because you are it. It's a homecoming. It's a looking in the mirror. The entire act is self-referential. You will realize that you are God. The reason it's been so hard for you to see this simple fact is the same reason you lose your glasses while you're wearing them. The reason you cannot see that you are God is the same reason the fish does not know it's wet. There is no judgment in this elevated place. There is no review of your life or criticism. There is no score being kept or grades being given. There's only unconditional, total, and complete love and acceptance for all that is. There is complete empathy and understanding beyond the capacity of human intellect, which is often overridden by pride and emotion. Pure love. So you can read more of this in the book. One thing that, so maybe I'll take this as my screenshot for the video. One thing that I am reminded of as I'm just reading through that again is in some senses, chaos of feeling every emotion stacked on top of itself at the same time. Again, it's really hard to imagine that because in our day-to-day capacity, we can't really feel all of it at once. But imagine every single emotion. So if you look at, like, there's a thing called a feeling wheel. If you imagine every negative emotion, fear, guilt, shame, anger, lust, envy, uh, greed, apathy, pride, blah, 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 blah. And then it's like love, joy, compassion, um, acceptance, peace, like all those things sandwiched on top of each other. And the net effect of that is this expansion, because then it all turns into one feeling. Imagine hearing every note of music at the same time. Imagine seeing every color at the same time, and then identifying colors that don't exist in physical form. So you're seeing all of this, you're feeling all of this, and that can be very overwhelming, and it can be scary, and it can be very challenging. So if you don't like to be frightened, I would say no one likes to be frightened. I mean, sometimes we like, but actually, I'll challenge that. There's a reason why we like going to scary movies. There's a reason why we like going to horror movies. We like seeing scary movies because we like to be thrilled in a safe environment, knowing that it's not real, knowing that we can pull ourselves back out. And that is kind of what DMT is, but it's much more real. All right. Do not do 5-MeO DMT if you don't want to open your heart. When you do these medicines, and it's not just DMT, it can be ayahuasca or LSD or mushrooms. Like all psychedelics are basically heart openers. So some of us, myself included, derive some sort of value from creating hardness or a shell around certain areas of our lives or with certain people, because it would be too painful to confront certain areas of ourselves or confront certain relationships for whatever reason. Um, and with DMT, it's going to force you to open that, because it just removes all of that barrier. I've had falling outs with people in my family or with friends, and then after the DMT, I have to confront that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to go to them and try to make amends. I mean, sometimes that is what happens, but it forces you to look inside and open your own heart and understand what's in there and why that is, and remove some of that armor that you've kept. And for some people, the armor is serving a very useful purpose. And I can't judge for you whether it's right or wrong to hold on to the armor. I will say that one thing I've learned, and my friend Dr. Brett Jones, who's actually coming out with a book with New Wave, said this to me years ago, and it stuck with me. The armor serves two purposes. It keeps out pain. It's designed to keep pain away, but it also keeps out healing, right? So whatever you're using to protect yourself from pain also blocks healing a lot of times. And this is also true in a even like a pharmaceutical sense of, if you're taking a lot of painkillers, you can kill pain, but you won't actually be sure when your body is healing, because you actually need pain as an indicator of progress. If you're numb, you won't know if your body is healing. And so, and even like, I don't go into it now, but like I've had situations where I've been injured, and the painkillers, while they were useful in one period of the healing part, actually detracted from other stages of the healing process. So it's the same with your heart, right? And so these psychedelics, especially DMT, will force you to open your heart and examine it and potentially remove some of that armor, and you might not be ready to do that. Last thing, do not, well, I have two more. Do not do DMT if you do not want to explore the astral plane. This is different for everyone, but essentially you're opening a portal to receive things from a different plane of existence. So again, it depends on, what your spiritual beliefs are and where you're at with that. But so if the human is, let's say the human is an antenna, and we're picking up certain frequencies of the world. Just like dogs can see and hear different elements of the world that we cannot hear and see. They have different color perception, they have different sound perception. You'll notice your dog's ears perk up for things that you can't hear. And the same thing with like all types of animals. That every animal on Earth has a slightly different level of perception, and some are seeing the world in totally different ways. Have you ever seen some of those illustrations of what an insect sees or what a spider sees, and the mirrored vision that they see, which is kind of creepy but interesting all the same? Well, we have our own version of that, and what that essentially means is that our brain is so powerful that it has to limit the frequencies that we're able to pick up on, because it would be too much to handle at once. So even right now, think about everything that's happening. Obviously I'm speaking, but outside the door there's a garbage truck driving, and that garbage truck is creating sound. I can notice the grass moving. I can hear the air conditioner going. I feel my body, it's a little bit hot because I closed the window. I'm always closing and opening the window on these presentations, on these videos. My heart is beating, I'm breathing, I can feel that. I can feel the sensation of the clothes against my skin. I can feel my foot on the chair. I can feel my butt on the seat. I can feel the sensation of my pants. Like, if you really stop and think about all the individual sensations you can experience at once, and all the things that are going on, your brain has to block out 99.99999% of that, because otherwise you would go crazy. There's too much going on. And so you can perceive all that, but you can't perceive all that at once. And on a higher level, there are spiritual things happening all around us. There are signs and symbols and omens, and there are things speaking to us all the time, which for our own sake, a lot of times we will block out. And I'm not trying to get too, like, insert your own meaning into this. Even if you are religious, I still think the voice of God is speaking to you at all times. Do you choose to listen? And if you're just spiritual, you might see symbols or omens. Like, there are subtle acknowledgments of a deeper world happening all the time that we typically overlook because we're locked into the physical reality. At the end of the day, they say we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, but that physical experience is pretty dense and heavy, and we have to be focused on that at all times. So we don't often, that's why meditation can be so powerful, because it forces you to expand the circumference of the radius of your sensation, right? And to be able to expand what you can feel in the moment, and to be really present, because we're normally not that present because we're so focused on a task that we're doing or a thought that we're having. And so we can't actually focus on the fact that, oh yeah, I can actually still taste the coffee in the back of my throat right now. It tastes good, And so when it comes to the astral, when you take DMT, it's not just like a one and done. You'll take the 5-MEO, and it'll be a 15-minute experience or a 20-minute experience. But then the medicine stays in your system for a while. And it opens up, if you believe in like the third eye, it opens up your third eye. It opens up your, as Aldous Huxley would call it, your doors of perception. And you start to see more things. You start to notice more things. And I'll share with you an experience that I just had. At the end of last year, I did a DMT journey. Keep in mind, this is 10 years in for me, so it's not my first rodeo. And I had an experience that I'd never had before. Every night after that DMT experience. I had it around Thanksgiving. I had it like right at the end of November of last year. And for about 5 days after that, every night that I would go to sleep, I would go back into the experience. I would go back into the portal, back into the trip. And then maybe in the past I'd had it maybe 1 or 2 days after, but never for a full week. So that alone was really sensational and otherworldly. And one thing that I noticed, or that wasn't that I noticed, one thing that happened to me about 3 or 4 days in was, I'm just trying to remember right now. About 3 or 4 days in, I was sleeping, and around 4 o'clock in the morning, I was awoken by the feeling, the sensation of the other side of the bed being pressed down. And there was no one else sleeping with me at the time. And I had the feeling that someone else was getting into bed with me. And I didn't have sleep paralysis. I didn't feel like I was paralyzed, but I woke up, or at least I felt that I had woken up. It was, again, that was that DMT state somewhere in between sleeping and waking. And I felt someone get into the bed with me. And I didn't turn around, but I knew who it was. And I knew it was my grandmother, who died in 2016. And I felt her get into the bed with me. And she didn't say anything for the first moment, but what I understood was that she was just coming to check on me, because she hasn't really come too much to check on me in that way since she died. Sometimes, I think she's come to me a few times in my dreams. She came to me in another dream when I was in Morocco. She came to me. I think in general, though, she's kind of like over the earth plane, and she wants to be out there, and she doesn't really care to be over here. But she has come to me sometimes. But this is the first time in many years, probably 5 or 6 years. And I knew that she was coming to check on me. And the reason I'm sharing the story with you is because it was so real. It wasn't just a mental experience, it was a physical experience of the bed shifting. And then I heard her voice, and I saw her hand, and she pointed at the ceiling fan. And she said, "Look." And there was the ceiling fan, which it wasn't, I didn't leave it on before I went to sleep. But I remember it in this state spinning, and this bright light was spinning. And she said, "Look." And then she laughed, and she was gone. And then, this is 4 a.m., 3 or 4 a.m., I heard my mom's voice. And she said, "Daniel, it's time to wake up." And I just sat up in bed. And the thing is, I sat up after that experience. And it wasn't like I woke up and sat up. I was awake when I was awake. Like, there was no difference between my grandmother getting into the bed with me, speaking, pointing, and hearing my mom. There was no like, "Oh, now I'm awake." I was already awake, because when I heard my mom's voice, I looked at the clock and I said, "It's 4 a.m." And it was such a shattering experience. The next day, I was telling my mom about it. I just cried. It was so powerful. And so those are the types of things that might happen to you. And look, I've been 10 years into this, and that's never happened to me before. And I called my shaman, my guide, and I was like, "This happened." And he's like, "Dude, yeah, that astral plane is open, so buckle up." And it just goes back to show you that no journey is ever the same. No two journeys are the same. You never know what to expect, and it can definitely open you up to new territory. And you might not want to do that for a lot of reasons. Lots of people don't want to do that. So that was my experience. It could definitely happen to you in your own way. You're not going to have the same experience I had, but you might see your dead grandma. Last thing. Do not do DMT if you don't want to know a secret. Do not do DMT if you don't want to know a secret. The way I think about how DMT changes you, and psychedelics in general, but especially DMT, is that it feels like you're in on this hilarious inside joke, this secret inside joke between you and you, and you just have to hold it in forever. Because you walk around after these experiences, even just the first experience, you walk around with this knowledge that is kind of ineffable. It's hard to put into words. I mean, I tried within the book, but even that's not it. And even in the Tao, the Tao Te Ching, they say that the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. So anytime you try to put words to something that fundamentally doesn't have words, that's not the thing. So whatever you hear me say from the book is still not the thing. And it's not something that can be described in human words, because human words have a level of, they're static constructs. And it's like, if I say to you water, that doesn't make you wet. It doesn't. Because water is just it's a vocal utterance, a construct for something in the world which exists that we had to name in order to be able to have a common reference for it. But water and the thing that flows in the river are not the same thing. Water is just a sound. That thing in the river is something that doesn't have a name. It was there before names and before words and before letters. And water is also not hydrogen and oxygen. Those, again, are names for a thing that intrinsically don't have names. The more you try to pinpoint it, the less you're actually seeing it. Just like there are no specific points, and I'm going to get back to just like there are no specific points in the world. Like if you were to say, point to my hand. Is it here? Is it here? If this was like a phone or a pinch screen, if I zoom in, is it that molecule? If I zoom in more, is it that molecule? Is it that molecule? And you could just keep going. You could zoom and zoom and zoom and zoom and zoom. And which one is the hand? Alan Watts would say, like, when you have a hand, at what point does it go from hand, I like this analogy, from hand to fist? Is it fist now? Is it now? Is it now? Is it now? Is it now? Where is the point where it goes from hand to fist? And so everything is on a gradient. Everything is on a spectrum. And there are no specific points. There are no specific times. We create these constructs to try to give us some sense of control in the world, because otherwise we'd go crazy. We have to say, well, time is a very useful construct because it allows people to like meet on time and organize things and get together, but it's not actually real. We are creating it and agreeing on it, but it's a human construct. So you start to understand these things, not just intellectually, but viscerally and intuitively after having done certain psychedelics, especially DMT, and that just makes things funny. And it lets you in on a secret, which you can't really tell anybody. I mean, I'm telling you, but even me telling you the thing is not the thing. That's the thing. Even me telling you this is still not the thing. I'm only giving you an approximation of what the secret is. It's not the actual secret. The Tao that can be named is not the Tao. So you're walking around with this secret that you can't tell anybody, and it makes everything hilarious, and to a certain extent it kind of makes your day-to-day life seem pointless but also beautiful, and in that way it kind of fucks things up. It just totally turns things on its head, and for some people it would be easier to just look at the world as black and white because it makes it less complex. And simplicity sometimes can be soothing. So yeah, those are reasons not to do DMT. Where do you get DMT? Well, DMT is a Schedule 1 substance in America, so it's illegal to possess or to use. But I would say that you can travel for it. I mean, it's legal in other countries. Just look on Google. They have retreats for this stuff. So do your research. Always vet your sources in terms of like, they should come from someone that you know. If you're going to go to a retreat, inquire deeply, read through the reviews of these places, be intelligent about it, and find someone who is going to guide you. Find someone who has a track record of doing things successfully. Talk to people who've worked with that guide before. There are ayahuasca retreats for this type of stuff too. So do your due diligence as if you were going to do something very important. Think of it like this. If you're going to get an open heart surgery, you would definitely review the doctor, want to talk to his other patients, see their success rate, look at it like you're having a very serious surgery, and consider it, and don't be rash about it. I met my shaman, which is funny to say. I met my shaman through a mutual friend who was a friend of multiple different friends of mine, so it was a good connection. It was a trusted source, and he's proved himself over many years. And no, I can't connect you to him. What do I look like? I'm not a drug dealer. That's it for today. If you want to, this is like a hard switch. By the way, I'm doing some coaching sessions. I have some VIP spots open. Has nothing to do with psychedelics. But I will say this, all of this, although it has stripped away some of the business aggression, I would say it's made me care less about material results in general. It has opened my mind. And one thing I will say is that having had the DMT experience, even if you can't quite remember the exact experience when you leave it, you remember that you knew it once. Like, I'll never forget this. One of my high school math teachers, Mr. Carroll, said, "I'm going to teach you calculus now, and most of you are going to forget it. But what you will remember is that at one point you knew it, and that will be valuable to you." And I think that's a great way to think about these psychedelic experiences, because you never can quite remember the exact experience when you're outside of it. You think you remember, but you don't. But just knowing that you have been to a place where all of that melts away and knowing that that exists gives me and might give you a sense of great peace. And that has helped me in my business journey. And it has helped me in supporting others, because I feel like it's allowed me to cut through a lot of the noise of what happens with people in their business life and how it connects to their personal fulfillment and how it all fits together. So I am bringing on a few VIP clients and students. You can check out the link in my description box. There's nothing to buy in that link. It is just an opportunity to speak with me for 15 minutes. It'll be me for 15 minutes. We'll see if whatever you're working on is a good fit for us to align. I'm really great at helping put together offers and share them with the world. You've seen my videos. Somehow I've made millions of dollars over the years. And so I'm good at making money, and I can help you too, if that's what you want to do. You can book a time with me. It's in the description. Also, if you want to publish a book with New Wave Press, my publishing company, that link is in the description. And I will put a link to my book, The True Artifact, which is not actually published under New Wave Press yet. We got to republish it. This is just published under Amazon, but I will be republishing it probably next year. All right, that's it. Like, subscribe, share, do some DMT. Peace.